Hello, and welcome to Free Agency Day. And the other shoe has dropped. I think that's the term you're supposed to use. From the moment the Golden Knights acquired Jack Eichel, we knew that this day or some version of this day would come. I would have guessed it probably would have come closer to the trade deadline of last year. Obviously, that did not happen. They played the LTIR game. They blamed man games lost on why they didn't make the playoffs. We got through that season without having to get to this point. Then we had, I guess the Dadonov thing happened, but then we get to this offseason, and it was clear, it's been clear the whole time that they're going to have to do something. This team's way over the salary cap. They're going to have to do something. And we enter today in a situation where Riley Smith has a deal that we know is there, and they haven't been able to actually put it through yet because still they have to do something. And, I've been talking about the possible options. And for me, Pacioretty has been the one that I've heard the most chatter about it being possible. I had been looking around. I thought Carolina was one that could potentially go the route of looking at, going a different path this season, and he could potentially be a fit. I always thought maybe they'll get something back. They didn't. And in the end, it appears that and it's not even appears, it's just a straight up fact. This pattern that the Golden Knights started, I guess I would go back to the moment they signed Alex Pietrangelo, has been buy high, sell ridiculously low. And the buy high hasn't always been way too high. And you can make even an argument that you can say it's buy at the standard price and then sell ridiculously low. And consistently, that has been the case with Nate Schmidt, with Paul Stastny, with Marc-Andre Fleury, with Evgeny Dadonov, and now with Max Pacioretty and Dylan Coghlan. I think that that's going to probably get lost in a lot of this as we move forward, is that they gave up a usable defenseman, a legitimate NHL defenseman. Now, you may not think that Dylan Coghlan is the next coming, and arguably the Golden Knights have some options behind him. Hutton potentially is a better option. We'll see moving forward. I like the upside on Coghlan better there. Korzak could potentially find his way in that group. So that's not the end of the world, but it's a usable defenseman, and it wouldn't shock me if he finds his way into Carolina's lineup and we are sitting here, in 9 months from now, 10 months from now, whatever it is, watching Dylan Coghlan score in the postseason. But what's happened with this trend of let's buy when we want to buy, and then we'll just figure out how to sell when we get to the point that we absolutely have to sell. What it's done is it's left the Golden Knights with a roster that is good, but not great. It is a roster that is probably in the playoffs. I would say they're close, but based on the fact that they're in the Western Conference, division still isn't that good. I think that they're probably a playoff team, but I don't think you can look at this roster and reasonably say, without Max Pacioretty on it now, that they're probably headed towards winning a Stanley Cup. And in July of the offseason, that's not that big a deal. You could potentially get prospects that can come up and help you. You can make moves at the deadline. You can do all these things. But this pattern that they've gone through of buying at, I'll keep saying buy high, it's really buy at a fair price. I don't think Pacioretty's deal was that far off. It doesn't look good now. The first one where he got to the Golden Knights doesn't look great now, but I don't think it was that crazy. I don't think it was that crazy to buy Pietrangelo at $8.8 million. I don't think it was that crazy to buy Martinez at the 2 picks. I thought it was a little high, but it wasn't that ridiculous. I didn't think it was that ridiculous to pay what they paid for Jack Eichel, but all of these led to what we continuously are seeing, selling off players for absolutely nothing. And what happens when you do that is the roster that you're left with doesn't have anything underneath it. And what I mean by that is when you look at the Golden Knights prospect pool, and I've been doing it all week, and I plan on going and doing it the rest of the weekend coming up here. There's just not a lot of excitement there in what is there. Do I think that Ivan Morozov can play in the NHL one day? Yeah, probably. Do I think that Brendan Brisson can play in the NHL one day? Yes, probably. Caden Korzak, yes, probably. There are other guys in that group. I think there's a number of them. But I don't see a player that is going to come in and be massively above replacement level to where I can feel like in the next year or two that they're going to be looking at someone that's going to be making $900,000 and playing at a $7 million level. Just unrealistic at this point. That is the first part. The second part is they're actually at a deficiency in picks. They're not that far away from what they should be at this point, but having missed the first round pick last year, having missed the first round pick in 2018, a number of other second round picks have been missing. The cupboard is not chock full of what it should be when you trade the reigning Vezina winner, a 30-goal scorer that basically, if he stays anywhere close to healthy, he's going to get 30 for Carolina. Even if he doesn't stay healthy and plays only 45, 50 games, he's probably pushing 20. Evgeny Dadonov was a 20-goal scorer. You traded other players along the way. Nate Schmidt was a, top 4 defenseman. Paul Stastny scored like 60 points the year that they got rid of them. Like, these are players that you should have been getting first-round picks back. Look at Kevin Fiala. Now, I understand the Golden Knights players haven't been to the level of Kevin Fiala. If Pacioretty was healthy the entire season, maybe he is closer to Kevin Fiala. Kevin Fiala is a lot younger. Kevin Fiala is in a different situation. However, they got a first-round pick. They got a first-round pick for Kevin Fiala, and they were just as cap-strapped, if not worse, than the Golden Knights. But they were not in a situation where they absolutely had to trade that particular player. The Golden Knights have been in this situation time and time and time again. You knew they cannot keep Nate Schmidt. You knew they could not keep Marc-Andre Fleury. You knew that it was one of the four, Martinez, Marchessault, Carlson, or Pacioretty. It had to be one of those four that had to go. And when they looked around and were selling those assets, there wasn't going to be a lot coming back because everyone knew there's no way that they're getting underneath the salary cap without one of us taking on one of their players. Let's take them for a ride here. Montreal took Vegas for a ride, getting rid of Shea Weber and taking on a usable player in Evgeny Dadonov. Anaheim really would have taken Vegas for a ride on the same Dadonov deal. No doubt, Carolina takes them for a ride here. Chicago took on Marc-Andre Fleury, gave up absolutely nothing, flipped them around for a second-round pick at the deadline, even without him having a massive season. This trend that they're on has left them with a team that does not have a path, in my opinion, to win the Stanley Cup. And it is devastating to sit here and say that coming off what we were looking at multiple years ago when this was happening, not a major. That team had a ton of cap space. That team was arguably the best team in the Western Conference, had a legitimate shot of winning the Stanley Cup. They're not there anymore. Look at the team that they're going to run out here. The bottom six is going to be headed up by Nick Waugh. He will absolutely be the best player in the bottom six. Now, there's an outside shot that they find a way to grab Matthias Janmark back, or they find Paul Stastny or whatever is out there, one of the Stromes. If they can find a way to get one of those, maybe you move Chandler Stevenson back down to a third line, and that's your option now. Like, Carrier, Kolazar, Waugh, Howden, Amadio, Patrick. That's your bottom six at the moment. And maybe you get Brisson pushing somebody out of there. I don't see it happening. I think he's potentially going to be an option up the lineup down the road, but I don't think that's happening anytime soon. And maybe Morozov is a little bit better than some of these other players. But the bottom six is not good at this moment. And the top six, historically, the misfit line has been awesome at times, but also at other times, they haven't been to the same level that they were the first couple of years, and there's been some injury issues there. The top line what is that line now? Stevenson, Eichel, and Stone. What do you play them against? What are you looking for? And then the biggest piece of all of this is you just got rid of a coach that was maximizing the bottom end of your defense. The group of Haig, Whitecloud, Coghlan, Hutton, those guys who were generating offense, Holden when he was still here, are not going to anymore. And I think you're going to get less offense out of Alex Pietrangelo. I think you're probably getting, or almost certainly getting, less offense out of Zach Whitecloud. And you're trying to play in a new system where now it's basically going to be reliant on the forwards, and you're down to only 6 forwards that are legitimate scoring options. And even that, we could be pushing it, calling all 6 of those legitimate scoring options. Like, really, when you think of scoring, there's only 2 guys on the roster, or at least on the forward group, that do it: Eichel and Marchessault. Like, Stone will get his points. Carlson will get his points. Stevenson will get his points. Like, I don't think this is a bad team. I don't look at this and say they're horrific. They're 5th place in the Pacific. They're not. They're not at all. It's still a team that can go out and beat most teams on a given night. But the goal here was to find a way to make this roster into something that was a legitimate cup contender. And they keep getting farther and farther and farther away. And the reason it keeps happening is this pattern that they've been going through. The Eichel one, it's just completely off the deep end. And I'm going to say this now, and I'm going to continue saying this. I honestly, truly believe that the Jack Eichel trade is either the worst move in franchise history, or it will go down as the top 3. I already think it's in the top 5, but I think it's going to get to either number 1, number 2, or number 3, behind firing Gallant and DeBoer, and then potentially re-signing Leonard. Those are the ones. But the reason I think that deal is so bad is because before it happened, even before it happened, when it was just rumors, I just went through all of it in a tweet thread. It's out there. You can find it. And I said, look, no matter how they go about doing this trade, no matter the structure, it doesn't matter what it is, they're going to give up quite a bit just to get the player. And then the ripple effect is going to be multiple players beyond it. And the moment they made that deal, it has now cost them 6 legitimate assets. Now, I understand that people want to take me to task about that. Oh, well, but there's other things, and they were over the cap when they made it. Yes, I get that. But if they had not made the Eichel trade, if they didn't make that trade, the only thing they would have had to do this summer is move Laurent Brossoit. Everything else could have taken care of itself. Still would have had Tuck, still would have had Krebs, still would have had that first-round pick. Now, and now it's Pacioretty and Dadonov and Coghlan. That trade, while I promise you, I still believe that Jack Eichel is the best player on the team, certainly the most talented player on the team. I believe Jack Eichel will pass the 43-goal mark at some point in his Golden Knights career and become the all-time goal scorer in one game or in one season. I think it's likely that he becomes the all-time highest goal scorer in franchise history. I think he becomes the all-time point scorer in franchise history. I think he will rewrite the record books for the Golden Knights. And I also think it will be the worst move that the franchise has ever made because it set them back. They were not in a position to take on that player at that time. And when they did it, you're now seeing what has happened. You're now seeing Dadonov for Shea Weber. The best thing they could do to get rid of the best player at home games for the team was take on 4 years of LTIR. The best thing they could get for a legitimate 30-goal scorer who shows up in big moments most of the time, Max Pacioretty, was nothing. Future considerations. And they had to add a player in to make it even just that. It could have been worse. It could have been they don't even want Coghlan and it's Pacioretty in a 3rd-round pick. This path that they've taken has left them with a roster that isn't good enough to win the cup and a cupboard that is not stocked enough to help them go beyond it. And now, looking forward, they have maybe $3 million in cap space if they do real well with the other RFAs. So you can potentially buy a $3 million player. That guy's going to have to play like he's $9 million. And then you're going to have to get lucky that one of these prospects that doesn't appear, at least at this point, to be ready to take a massive leap takes that massive leap. And then I think it's going to take multiple teams to have horrific series against you. It's going to be awfully difficult. Now, there are other things that happened today that affect this. And we have to understand that like things are going to change over the course of however long we're going to be looking at this. Like whatever you think the window is, things can still change. And there were some things that can work out in the Golden Knights' favor. So getting the Smith thing done is certainly a positive. I don't know that there was ever a situation where that wasn't going to happen, but to see it actually go down and make it happen, that's what we like to see. That's good. Good job getting that done. I do think that Riley Smith is certainly a good player to have on your roster at $5 million. I'm good. That's good to have happen. Howden, I like that nothing goofy went on with Howden. I didn't like that the qualifying offer wasn't there. I think the price on Brett Howden's a little bit high. I don't like that it's a one-year deal on him because of the situation that the Golden Knights are in. I would have loved to have seen this be a 2 or 3 year deal on Brett Howden. I don't like it at 1.5 right now because I don't know that he's going to definitely pass that, and that makes him effectively unwaivable. If you waive him, he actually is going to take up some cap in the minor leagues now, where if you had gotten him for 1.2 or whatever. If the deal were longer, I think you could have seen that progression that we started to see before that injury, where he was starting to look like he could potentially be a little bit of a difference maker, certainly above a replacement level player. To get him at 1.5, I don't think 1.5 is bad. I think he's actually one of the candidates on this team, maybe one of the higher candidates to outperform his contract. But if he does that, and let's say he does that to a massive level, it's a 1-year deal. And we're going to be right back in this situation again without the cap space next season, having to figure out what do we do with Brett Howden. So that one, happy that they kept Brett Howden, happy that that didn't happen, whatever. Now, getting rid of Pacioretty, the situation as I've kind of calculated it to this point is they effectively have $6.5 million left. They need to sign Haig, Wah, and Kolazar. I think reasonably between the three of them, you're probably looking at somewhere in the ballpark. If you get lucky, it's down around 4.5. If you get a little bit, if it goes a little bit crazy, I think it can be a little bit higher, maybe more like 5, 5.5 if things go really, nutty, right? So yeah, so this, he could potentially get a qualifying offer of 1.5, but he's going to be arbitration eligible again. So if he has a big year, that qualifying offer is not going to do any good. It'll just keep him under Golden Knights contract. And then once the RFA ARB situation comes in, if he scores 35 goals, he's going to be looking at $5 million on ARB, and that's not what you're looking for. So that's where I'm at on that one. Wah, I think they have a little bit more freedom there on Wah. You can now start to look at, do we want to do a little bit of a longer term deal? Do we want to make something happen? A couple people asking what are future considerations. Future considerations is the fancy way in the NHL of saying absolutely nothing. It's for nothing. So what it means is technically you have to acquire something in a trade. If there's cap related to it, if somebody's holding cap or something of that sort, there actually has to be a player attached to it. When it's just players or picks moving one way or the other, you can actually do it for future considerations. The Golden Knights once traded Mark Mathot, I believe, for future considerations. There was another player. Maybe it wasn't Mark Mathot, but it was early, or I think it was the guy from Chicago, penalty killer, Marcus Kruger, I think was the one. That was that. It's a fancy way of saying they got absolutely nothing. They're never going to get anything off of those future considerations. So just figure that out from there. I think that the Wah one gives you a little bit more freedom now, where I think yesterday, if you were looking at saying maybe we want to go 6 years at 3.5 on Nick Wah, that would have been a little bit off the wall at this point, saying we can't really afford it inside of 2022-23. It'll be great for 2025-26. We can't do that. I think you do have a little bit more freedom there, so that's certainly a positive. Same thing goes with Haig. I think we could probably take the holdout off the table for Haig, because I think they do at least have something to give him. They're going to have to come to an agreement there, and I think the Golden Knights have to take advantage of the situation that they're in there to figure out, do we want to go a little bit longer? Do we want to stay a little bit under? How do we want to look at this? And there's a way to potentially make something work there. these are the contracts, and the last one's Kolazar. I don't know where he's going to fall. I don't know that there's a lot of kind of gray area on him. I think we know what type of player he is. We know what type of player he's going to be. I think you got to just kind of pay him what he deserves and move on from there. But Waugh and Haig are two that maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, maybe if you actually go a long distance here and get it 3 years from now, maybe when the cap starts going up, you could be looking at having those guys on really, really good deals at whether they're 2 million, 3 million, whatever it happens to be. I think there is a potential to take advantage of that now that they have moved Pacioretty out. And that's the part of the deal that, like, I'm never going to celebrate 30-goal scorer Max Pacioretty, one of the best players on the team, definitely one of the best goal scorers on the team, a guy that was a huge part of everything they did when they were at their best, for absolutely nothing. I'm never going to celebrate that. But what I am going to celebrate is finally it does appear they're not going to play the game where they're juggling injured players the entire time. And everyone's sitting here wondering, when is this going to go down? And how are we going to take care of all this? And then using that as an excuse for when things didn't line up the way that they wanted to. I think it does give them a little bit more freedom to make some moves and make things happen a little bit better here. The name that jumps off on the RFA or on the free agents today is the one that they didn't actually announce, and that's Manaman, the Finnish guy who's been playing in the KHL. He was in the KHL in Ukraine. Russia invaded Ukraine, and he said, "Fuck you guys, I'm out." And basically just walked away from the KHL the moment that happened. So certainly a character guy from our perspective, if you're looking at it that way. But he's a tiny guy. 5'6" is what they listed him at the Olympics. That's going to be tricky, but I haven't seen him skate. I imagine he skates very, very well. I've seen him on the power play. He's very good on the power play, really dangerous with that one-timer, really good potential option there. And this is a really low-risk, high-reward player that, again, hopefully this is a 2, 3, 4-year deal. I doubt it. I bet it's going to be a 1-year deal when we end up getting this. But I do think that this is the potential of another player to play above what he was. Now, we're asking for a lot for that to happen for a guy who's never played in North America and is, as tall as Jason. It's going to be tricky, but maybe that is an option. The other guys, Freeze, Rempal, Hutchinson, backup goalie. Like, I don't see a lot in any of that. Like, I know that Freeze and Rempal have scored, but it's basically career AHLers there. I don't see a lot going on there. And that's that. The last thing that I think really kind of jumped out to me over the course of today, and I guess I could go back the last couple of days, is the backup goalie market. So the backup goalie market is one that we've been sitting here saying, well, it looks like the Golden Knights are in a really good position, understanding that Logan Thompson at the worst is going to be their backup. He could potentially move forward and become the starter, in which case with Robin Lehner, you're under $6 million having the two players together. However, when you look at all the goalie contracts, if you go to any of these sites, Puckpedia, Cap Friendly, whatever, and sort them by goalies that signed today, you'll notice that it's either starters that were making somewhere in the 5 to 6 range or backups that were barely pushing 1.5. Like, most of them were under 1. And with all these teams doing this, the injury to Brissois, the injury to Lehner, the uncertainty around Thompson, I don't know how they're going to be able to get out from underneath a Brissois contract without paying that off. So if they do end up deciding we have the ability to potentially use this $2.5 million on Brissois, and we could potentially go buy another player that could help us, or use the extra 2.5 that may be left over here, and now we have 5 here, maybe we can go buy a Nino Niederreiter, or we could buy, whoever else happens to be out there. One of the Stroms is the name that I keep looking at too. Like, there are guys that are out there, but I don't know how they're going to be able to get out from underneath Brisson because of the fact, or sorry, it's not Brisson. I'm reading this comment over here, and I'll answer that in a second, from Brissois, because all the backups are making less now, and significantly less. And so now you can basically buy 2 backup goalies for the price of Laurent Brissois. And I don't know why someone would want to take that off the Golden Knights' hands. So that part is concerning to me. Will Brisson make the team? I will stand with no. We got 3 development camp game or scrimmages coming up the next couple of days here. I'm going to go into those with a very open mind, looking for him to be able to change them and make me think that it's more likely that could happen. At the moment, I would put him 3rd place of likely to make the roster behind Caden Korczak and Ivan Morozov. I think Caden Korzak's clearly the closest to being ready to play in the NHL. I don't even think it's all that close compared to the others. However, they have to find a spot to do that. The buyout thing with Brisson, I cannot stand buyouts. It just fucks you sideways over and over and over again. It's just an absolute disaster. And I understand that it wouldn't be that expensive for this year, but it would for further, and then it just gets in the way. I don't like that. But with Brisson, I'm still seeing the same issues that I had seen in the past. I want to see what it looks like in these 3 games coming up. I'm hoping he scores a bunch, but I'm also hoping we have a little bit more on, situations where he has more more control of the puck in the offensive zone, able to make a little bit more passing, generate his own chances for him or his teammate, however that happens to be. Yes, Korczak is a D-man. That is a situation where they could potentially, do something else there and open up that spot. Where's the question of here it is, just waive him? I'm assuming this is talking about Brisson. You really can't. So if you waive him, you have to assume that he clears, because if you were to be able to trade him, I think somebody would be able to do him. Would be able to do that, to take him off your hands. So if you can't trade him, then he probably makes it through waivers. And if he makes it through waivers, then he still counts about $1.3 million against the Golden Knights cap. And now we're right back to the same number against the cap as when we had Logan Thompson up there. So it doesn't make any difference really when they do that. Thompson comes up, he's at $750,000. Brisson goes down, he's at $1.2 million buried. And you're saving $500,000. It doesn't make a huge difference. It doesn't really do all that much. So I don't like that option either. So we'll see. Do you think Vegas sees Korczak as Coughlin's replacement? No. Korczak is a McNabb-style player. Korczak does not have a lot of offensive game to how he plays, but he's tremendous in the defensive end. He's very large, really good first pass off the puck, good decision maker in his own end. He's good defensively, and he's got the body to be an NHL player. I think he's going to be an NHL player. I don't see the fit for him at the moment. I think if anything, he pushes Hutton out of the way, and Hutton gets waived, and we see how that goes. But again, we're probably talking about a 7th defenseman. But injuries are going to happen. So we'll see. That's all I've got for this one, and then we'll move over to Twitter Spaces for you guys to talk. One thing, thanks to everybody who commented on the Discord poll. We are going to bring the SinBin Discord to life fairly soon, and what I'm realizing is that I'm going to need moderators. The SinBin Discord is not technically going to be free and open to everyone. There's an exclusivity situation there. However, if you decide you want to be a moderator, and I'll have to do some sort of interview process or something through that. If you want to be a moderator on the SinBin Discord, hit me up sooner than later on DMs, and we can figure out what's going on with that. The press conference tomorrow for Kelly McCrimmon is at 10 a.m. We will be at that. We'll have some information on that. I might hop on something in between that and the scrimmage. I don't know the full schedule yet. I know the scrimmage is at 4. I think there's some practices in between. So we will see what happens there. We'll certainly be on Twitter talking about all of that. Podcast is planned for tomorrow as well. So we'll get more information from Jason in this. And for now, I'm going to head over to Twitter Spaces. So hop on there. And if you want to talk, go ahead and do that. We'll see you over there.